Hello and welcome to another episode of Soap Goes to the Oscars. This is number 145. I'm recording on January 31st, 2026, and I watched the movie yesterday, Friday the 30th of January. And that movie was Anchors Aweigh. This is the first movie I'm watching from the 1945 Oscars, which was the 18th ceremony. And they're still just the year previous, they started calling it Best Motion Picture instead of Outstanding Motion Picture. And the ceremony for that was on March 7th, 1946. So this one, originally I had it as a rental from Amazon or Apple, but I had some Fandango at home credits from buying actual movie tickets. And so I found it on there. So it was $2.99, but I got it for free. And it was a really good. I don't know if all the versions, on other streaming services are the same, but it was a really good print of it. It was in Dolby, so the sound was really good. Picture was great. So, Anchors Aweigh is a 1945 American musical comedy film starring Frank Sinatra, Kathryn Grayson, and Gene Kelly, with songs by Jewel Stein and Sammy Cahn. Directed by George Sidney, the film also features Jose Iturbi, Pamela Britton, and Dean Stockwell, who was about 9 years old in this. He was in Quantum Leap, amongst many other things, obviously. The plot concerns two sailors on a 4-day shore leave in Hollywood who meet a young boy and his aunt, an aspiring young singer, and try to help her get an audition with the famed pianist and conductor Iturbi at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. In a sequence, Kelly dances with the animated Jerry Mouse from Tom and Jerry. The film was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. It received highly positive reviews and became a financial success. Those awards were Best Motion Picture nominated, Best Actor for Gene Kelly nominated, Best Cinematography Color nominated, Best Scoring of a Musical Picture for Georgie Stoll, which won, and Best Song, I Fall in Love Too Easily, music by Julie Stein, lyrics by Sammy Cahn, which it was nominated for. Also starring Rags Raglan, Billy Gilbert, and Henry O'Neill. Cinematography, Charles P. Boyle, Robert H. Plank. Edited by Adrian Faison. Not sure. Music by Georgie Stoll. Color process, Technicolor. Production companies, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and MGM Cartoons for the animated sequences. Distributed by Lowe's Inc. Released July 19th, 1945, with a runtime of 140 minutes. Film was the first of 3 buddy pictures teaming the cocky dancing Kelly with the against-type shy singing Sinatra, followed by Take Me Out to the Ballgame and On the Town, both in 1949. Production tried to mix some of the more successful story elements and set pieces from earlier MGM musical hits, such as Meet Me in St. Louis from 1944. The movie is remembered for the musical number in which Gene Kelly dances seamlessly with the animated Jerry Mouse, voiced by Sarah Berner. Tomcat appears briefly as a butler in the sequence, supervised by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. The animation was entirely undertaken by Kenneth Muse, Ray Patterson, and Ed Barge. Originally, the producers wanted to use Mickey Mouse for this segment. Some sources claim Walt Disney initially agreed to loan out Mickey, but Roy Disney rejected the deal. According to Bob Thomas's book on Roy Disney, the studio was in debt after World War II, and they were focusing on trying to release their own films out on time. According to Roy, they had no business making cartoons for other people. Kelly next went to Fred Quimby, the head of MGM's cartoon studio. Quimby was also not interested, but Kelly persisted, reportedly showing up at Hanna-Barbera's office to press the case. The dance sequence required meticulous storyboarding after the live dancing was filmed. The animators used rotoscoping to painstakingly match the animated characters' movement to Kelly's, even down to their shadows cast on the polished dance floor. Film offers rare color glimpses of the wartime MGM studio, including the Thalberg building, the front gate, the backlot, the commissary, and one of the scoring stages, which included an on-screen performance by real members of the MGM studio orchestra. During the soundstage scenes, the operation of MGM's latest camera mounted on a heavy boom is extensively demonstrated, including a side-bolted cutout viewfinder for the cinematographer to line up the shots, and operators deftly swiveling the pan controls or pulling the focus. There's also a memorable exterior scene at the Hollywood Bowl where Sinatra sings I Fall in Love Too Easily after Iturbi and a group of young pianists have performed an arrangement of Franz Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. Contemporary reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times, my man. Another humdinger of a musical has been produced by Joe Pasternak for Metro. For a popular entertainment, Anchor's Aweigh is hard to beat. Rotten Tomatoes gives a score of 56% based on 16 reviews. Interesting. So I didn't really know much about this, and I've seen the sequence with Gene Kelly and Jerry Mouse. I think it was part of the old either Lowe's or Sony Theaters intro when I worked there back in the 90s. And that's where I've seen it from. I did not realize there was a moment where he's like telling a story to kids in a school, and one of them being Dean Stockwell, the son of, or the nephew of the woman he falls in love with. And I like looked down for a minute at my phone, and I looked up, and all of a sudden there was an animated owl, and I was like, what the heck? And he goes into this castle, and then he goes, the whole sequence with Jerry, which was amazing. Like it's true. They match the movements perfectly. And then they're on these shiny floors, and you see Jerry's reflection in the floors. And I think I read something on another page that said that, after they filmed it, after they animated, then I don't know if they went back and looked at it, then they realized they had to do the reflections as well, because Gene Kelly's reflections were there. This is the first thing I've ever seen Frank Sinatra in. And I thought at first it was the only thing that I'd ever seen Gene Kelly in, or the first thing that I'd ever seen him in. But there was a movie called It's Always Fair Weather from 1955 that I remember Edgar Wright saying that it was one of his favorite movies, and him and his friends, I don't know if it was Simon Pegg and him, they used to watch it all the time, but he talked about how they loved it. And so I'd rented it one time, and back when we got Netflix in the mail, I think, and it was okay. And if rewatching it now, maybe I would appreciate it more, as I'm starting to appreciate these older movies more than I used to. But I didn't think it was great at the time, and it was super long, if I remember correctly. I don't know, an hour and 40 minutes. That's not bad. Maybe it just felt long. But speaking of long, this movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is the longest movie of the bunch this time, and I picked it because it was a Friday night, and it was about 9:00, and my wife was already falling asleep. And so I was like, 2 hours and 20 minutes will only be 11:20, plenty of time. I even watched a show after this. So I try to fit in the long ones when I know I have some time, so that I don't have to break them up, especially since it was a rental, because you only have a window to watch it. I'm glad that I did. This was very good, but it was definitely too long. There were certain things like, the Tom and Jerry, the Jerry Mouse thing is iconic, but did it need it? In a way, it's sort of like him telling the kids the story gives him some character development. But, there were things in the movie, including that sequence, that don't necessarily add to the movie, in my opinion. I'm sure there might be others that disagree. So that scene at the Hollywood Bowl, they show Iturbi playing a piano, and there's like dozens of other pianos and all these people playing Hungarian Rhapsody #2. And it's amazing. And there was some really cool stuff. Like I made some notes. There was a shot, like they're showing everybody play piano, and they show a shot of piano keys from underneath. And I don't know if they would have had plastic keys at that time, or if they made glass keys. But it was like a shot up through the bottom of the keys, and you see the fingers, but it was clear keys. Like the black keys were still solid. It was pretty cool. And then there were a couple other, there was a whole scene where it was sort of another fantasy sequence where he's realizing that he's in love with the woman, which Frank Sinatra thought he was in love with the whole movie. And it goes into this sequence at MGM Studios where he's like, it's like a Romeo and Juliet almost kind of thing. And he's dancing, and the camera moves, like it starts out way up high, and the camera like follows him over and then comes down and then follows him back up. And I don't know if there were any cuts or not, but he goes all the way back up to the top of the buildings and swings across. And then there was a shot later where she was the girlfriend there was getting her screen test. It's what she's been wanting the whole movie. And they had a shot like through the viewfinder of another camera of her face, and it pulled back from that. So there was a lot of really cool stuff. But there were just some sequences, I think, that didn't really propel the story. It was just sort of showing off, like the whole Hungarian Rhapsody thing was beautiful and it was cool, but it didn't propel the story anywhere. It was just another sequence where they were trying to get in touch with this Jose Iturbi to get an audition for the girl, and they miss it again. It happens like two or three times, three or four times maybe. And it was a lot of like sitcom stuff where they, if they would just actually, and this happens, I've said this about other movies in this series too, that if they would just talk to each other, especially when it's two men, if they would talk to each other, all these sort of misunderstandings would become clear, and obviously that's part of the movie, but it just added to the time of this one. So I just feel like it was a little overlong, but still an amazing movie. And I gave it 4 stars. Great music, and Sinatra was good. I didn't really like Sinatra at first, but by the end, he was I liked him. He was pretty good. So yeah, I went on a little ramble there, kind of like the movie, but very good. So a good start, 4 stars, and we'll see how the rest of this list goes. Yep. So 4 more movies to go in 1945, and we'll see you next time.